Welcome to episode 7 of The Boost with our guest, Bryan Kramer, CEO of H2H Companies and CEO of PureMatter. Let's go. All right. Welcome to The Boost, conversations with people promoting mental health. And I couldn't be happier to be here with Bryan Kramer. Bryan is a multi-time author of Shareology and also book There Is No B2B or B2C. It's human to human. And we're going to talk about human to human today. He's the CEO of an 11-year-old company, H2H Companies, that does executive coaching and teaching. He works with executives from brands that you've definitely heard of, Kraft Heinz and others. He's a keynote speaker through H2H. And then he's also been running PureMatter as a branding and marketing firm and works with Cisco and Netflix and IBM over the years, 24 years as part of that agency. So, Bryan, it's so cool to have you here. Thanks for being on the show today. How are you doing?
Man. Steve, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we talked back, I don't know, earlier this year, maybe January or February, we connected, and two things stuck out. One is that it's a small world, and we had a connection to a SaaS-based email marketing provider called Emma that was working with a lot of creative agencies and marketing firms and a lot of small and mid-sized businesses. And you were like a brand ambassador or a keynote speaker for some of their initiatives.
Yeah, brand ambassador for them, and I think I spoke at one of their events in Nashville, but it's been so long. But yeah, wow, what a trip to be connected to them. They go back, I want to say like 15 to 20 years ago, but I could be wrong. So yeah, it sounds when you said that, I was like, what a name from the past.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, back when email marketing was sexy. It's still powerful, but back then it wasn't quite the commodity it is now. It was just kind of on the scene. And then the other thing that jumped out of our conversation for me was sort of these three pillars that we'll talk about when it comes to brands, and we'll jump into that sort of simplicity and empathy and imperfection. But before we do all that, the way we'll always start is two quick prompts: the virtual hug and the shameless plug. So we'll go one at a time. The virtual hug is: tell us something or somebody you're thankful for today.
Oh, that's easy. I am thankful for my wife, Courtney. She's she's my whole life. And, if I could wrap my kids into that, I would, but just since you said one person, I'm going to include her. And she's just my heart outside of my body. So that would be that. The shameless plug, that's a little bit harder, but I'll do it anyway, since you asked. We are a little bit of a schizophrenic services business. So we do two things. One is we are outsourced CMOs and strategists, creative directors for companies, not just of Netflix and IBM. We also work with small and mid. When I say small, I mean like 10 million and up. Companies. So that's what we do on the PureMatter side. And then on the H2H company side, we're a business coaching side, and we company, and we love to coach executives and entrepreneurs, CEOs that want to grow without burnout. They want to continue to succeed and not face a life of work, because this life is the life that we have, and we want to live a full life. And so we're really excited about working with people that are wanting to grow, wanting to build, wanting to learn, and also at the same time want to live life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, make sure I get the name right. Courtney is your wife, and yeah. I've seen her name. You all work together too, right?
Yep, we are co-owners of PureMatter. She runs a good majority of it. In fact, she's the heart and soul of PureMatter, as much as she'd disagree with me if I said that, but she is the heart and soul of PureMatter. And so she tends to run a lot of the she's just brilliant. She does a lot she's a writer, she's a creative director, she's a strategist. She's all that and a mom and a to two and a dog and a mom to our dog Jessie. So and she keeps our house running 100%. I try to contribute as best I can, but yeah, she's all that and more.
Wow. Yeah, that's bedrock. That's foundational. That's awesome. And thanks for sharing it. So, sort of to kick things off from that point, since we're talking this direction and what you're doing with sort of maybe fractional CMO support and helping executives live the life that they want to live, because this is life. It's the one we get. One question that jumps out, if you could have the ear, let's say you're in a stadium full of marketing agency CEOs. And I ask this because we have a lot of marketing agencies who are, some of them are in the behavioral health or mental health space. Some are in healthcare generally. And then we have a lot that are sort of industry agnostic in our audience. But if you could gather all those leadership into one stadium, what would you want to tell them? Like, what would you need to say, especially around embracing change and evolving going forward? Because you've done this a number of times as the world has changed from a traditional agency model to digital marketing. But where are things at today if you could gather all those people together?
It's interesting because I don't know if you saw in the news, IBM is laying off like something like 8,000 or 9,000 people to try and, because they think they can replace people with AI. And this is the thing that a lot of agencies are facing right now is, what does this all mean for agencies creatively? What is creative? Are humans creative or are machines creative? Will they be more creative? Will they replace creativity? And my simple answer, because this could be like an entire show, but my simple answer is that technology cannot replace empathy. It just can't, and it won't for a very long time. I mean, I can't predict, 200 to 500 years from now, but it won't. It can't produce empathy. And so when what that means is that, in customer service, in branding, in, even in HR and people management and everything that we do, the thing in our customers, and the thing that matters the most to us in humanity is empathy. You might throw gratitude in there too, but empathy is the emotion. And so if we create more empathy with our customer, with our employee, and with ourselves, that's where we find our greatest achievement and connection. And so it really is, it doesn't scare me as much. It's kind of like when the calculator came out. When this calculator came out, people were picketing outside of Texas Instruments, saying, this is not right. You're gonna take away, our humanity because of a calculator. I think the same thing's happening today. This is just the new calculator, and we're gonna find ways to weave it into our process and how we're going to create differently. We can't always have things the same, or there would never be change. And this is that change that's happening, and it's happening more rapidly. That's what scares us, is that it's faster than when the calculator happened. So what I would say is, to all of that, if I wrapped it into one sentence, is that being human is your competitive advantage. If you stand out and you're more human than ever, you're going to compete at a higher level. So take all this technology and figure out, how can I show up being more human now more than ever?
Okay. So there's a fear of change with any technology. It could be the printing press, could be the calculator, which I didn't know about the riots at Texas Instruments with the calculator, or at least the pickets. And it's the same way. AI has come up in almost every conversation, and there's always this fear-based cloud around it. And my cheeky hypothesis is that AI turns into the character Data from Star Trek. And, he's got everything, all the answers, everything except love. And I think gratitude is right behind love, and empathy, yeah, right, stacked on top of gratitude. If we're sort of talking about values that separate us as humans. But you also make a great point, and I want to come back to the idea of empathy. And this is related, since we're talking about the tech, is that on Instagram the other day, and you're at Bryan Kramer 1, numeral 1, if anybody wants to follow you, you've got 40,000 followers or something. You think that it should be technology and humans working together. And the interesting point you made for me was that you said everything we do is about bringing relationships together faster. And I hadn't come to that conclusion. Could you talk a little bit about that idea and sort of the bright side of that idea? And then, how do we make that happen in the real world?
Yeah. Think back to a time not too far ago when Zoom wasn't really a thing. We had that technology, but it wasn't as prevalent. Maybe even before that. In most of our lifetimes, we can think of a time when we weren't on video together, and we had to travel to meet other people.
Yeah.
It actually was a good time, but it also solved a lot of challenges, which is that we can do more in less time, and that's the biggest challenge is time. And so when you ask what is technology and humans working together, it's bringing people closer faster. It's not distancing them more. That's key. If we think about marketing in how do I separate the human from the purchase, we're doing it wrong. We have to bring people closer in relationship. That's going to create more engagement, and more engagement is the number one KPI we should be looking at, not conversion, not clicks, not anything that is outside of human engagement. Engagement's that KPI that lifts everything up. It's that all tides lift all boats. That's engagement. And if we just look at engagement as the thing, we're going to get more sales. We're going to get more positivity. We're going to get more encouragement. We're going to get more lifetime raving fans. So create more engagement using technology. And then on the other hand, on the other side, then show up as a human to engage. That's what technology can do for us. So that's what the opposite of what I see a lot of companies doing. How can I automate more? How can I use AI more to replace humans? How can I use bots more? How can I use the next greatest thing to do more of replacing what I am doing as a human? No, that's not right. What we want to do is include it in, so it's a technology and humans working together to build more human touch points into engagement. That's what's going to create more of what you want.
So human engagement is the KPI to focus on. And at the same time, there's this beauty of the and I've seen it come up in your thinking in a number of ways. Let's see, I'm going to pull the notes. Oh, the dark and delightful is an aspect. There's the tech and the humanity. There's this, and maybe it's just how I'm wired, but I'm such a sucker for this concept, and I'm such a believer in this concept of the genius of the and the beauty of the and, because we sort of hurtle forward with this pendulum swinging back and forth sometimes between humanity and tech, or whatever the divisive argument is at the time, instead of saying, like what you just said, which is, no, keep the human engagement at the core. How can we use this technology, which is simply a technology, to drive our businesses forward in profitable ways and to make more human connections? I just love that idea. And it comes back to empathy. It comes back to the other two pillars, simplicity and imperfection. So maybe I've struggled with perfectionism in my lifetime. So maybe the imperfect part of it resonates especially with me. But could you talk a little bit about simplicity and imperfection, along with empathy, as the way to create that H2H, that human to human brand?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite topic. I believe that those are the three things that make companies more human. And I've researched it and done a lot of work around it almost my entire career, and know without a shadow of a doubt that companies do not show up with these things as intent. They show up with things like purpose statements and mission statements, and creating more around whatever their product outcome and impact needs to be, or maybe just outcome. What this means is that if we were to look at a human being and say, what attracts us to that human being? What is the thing that I love about Steve? And why do I want to hang out with Steve more? It's not because he has created a purpose statement that makes me want to connect more. It's not the things that companies look at and say, how do I do more of the things that, are prescripted and boilerplate. It's actually the opposite of that. It's the human side of what makes them imperfect, and what makes them empathetic, and what makes them simple. Most things in life are not simple. At least we make them out to be more complex than they really are. So take a brand, and I know I'm going to put you on the spot here, but what brand do you think, you've had time to think about this, but what brand do you think is simple in how it interacts, how it shows up?
Yeah, I would say In-N-Out Burger and Apple.
I love when I think you're the only person that I've asked that has said In-N-Out Burger, and I love that example. Apple is something that comes up, but In-N-Out Burger, what a great example. I think, it's funny when you're standing behind somebody in line and they get up to the front and they can't, they're like, the guy says, what do you want? And they don't know. And I'm like, you had three choices. Like how
and like 20, you've had 20 minutes in line because it's always packed.
Three choices. Yeah. It's just so funny. Like you really don't have a lot to pick from. So, I mean, that's what a wonderful brand to pick. Simplicity there. How about empathy? What brand do you think embraces empathy? Maybe I'm a little, customer service way. They show up and support their customer. That's oftentimes how empathy can show up.
Okay. So I think there's two that come to mind for me. One is this food delivery catalog I get from Zingerman's up in, I think, Michigan, maybe. Delightful humanity and customer service that you wouldn't believe. Zappos comes to mind as a shoe company that for a long time was blowing people away and blowing the competition away simply with the empathy.
Mm-hmm. That's two good ones, two great ones.
What usually comes up?
There's no usual. There's a lot of, interestingly, it's a lot of corporate brands, not local brands, which makes me a little bit sad. That empathy comes from corporate brands. The reason that I say that is because they, like you look at Amazon, and Amazon allows you to return any product, which makes you feel like they have empathy for you. Now, whether they do or not is another conversation, but they don't argue with you most of the time, unless there's a glitch in the system. But most of the time you could return anything to Amazon and they make it super easy. So you feel like, wow, they really care about me. It's just the feeling of, and that's what we're talking about here. But what I think we need to strive for is that all brands have this opportunity to create more of that feeling. And think about that, especially if you're a small business or you're a medium-sized business. Think about what these corporate brands are doing and bring more of that into what you're doing, because that's going to attract more clients. Now, how about the last one, which is imperfection? Ironically, when people screw up, and when they embrace it, we love them more. And it's ironic because that's what we do as humans. Like when we apologize to each other, we almost sometimes get closer together. Like it actually brings me in closer, like we peeled the layer of the onion more. Same thing for brands. So what brand do you think embraces imperfection?
I think my brand is really imperfect. It's it's even something I say at the mental health marketing conference almost every year, which is you don't have to be perfect to be amazing. And just to see, when I think of companies, I think of what I call the smile and the guts, so that there's this external interest in polishing and making everything shiny and bright. And then the inside is, and I've worked at dozens of companies, it's usually this nasty kind of swirly guts inside, and things regress to the mean. So, the more we sort of try to polish the brand is one thing I'm hearing. Not that we don't want to have beautiful design and graphic design work, all of that is well and good, but to be real and to be in connection with that. I've seen myself stumble so many times and have it turn into something where people really appreciate the relationship and the connection and the community. Avis comes to mind, maybe not today, but certainly they built their brand around, we're number two, we try harder, which is to say, yeah, we're not the alpha dog out here. We're not perfect, but at least we got the hustle and the grind. So that one comes to mind as some really amazing copywriting and ad work that probably propelled them forward for decades.
Oh, absolutely. And Avis returned my iPad to me all through private messaging on Twitter. And I put a tweet out to them saying, I lost my iPad. I can't figure out how to get it back. It's sitting in the car I left. They immediately responded, and they already knew. They matched my name up and found the car and found the iPad and said, we have it and we'll ship it back to you. We just need to confirm your address. I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
That was like that was like seeing me beyond the screen. And it didn't weird me out because I had asked for it. It wasn't sometimes things get a little bit weird on the internet when they know too much about you. But I wanted my iPad back and I asked for it. So I thought that was such a great empathetic way. This is a great brand, or imperfection. I mean, you might look at also like Dove. Dove celebrates the imperfection of skin. And you've seen that in a lot of their marketing and advertising and how they embrace that, especially today, given everything that's going on. Their take on imperfection is just beautiful. So there's a lot of different ways that we can celebrate it. We can also see companies that are not all three. Like it pushes us so far away, like we almost regress from the brand or push ourselves away from the brand because it doesn't have any one of those. Like it's okay to have one and you can do well. It's even better with two, and it's very rare to have all three. But it's also really bad when you don't even have one. And I can point out, and maybe I'll upset somebody who works for Facebook by saying this, but Facebook doesn't have any one of those. They're not simplistic. They're not empathetic. At least they don't show to be. And they don't embrace imperfection. And so when they screw up, it's like, and let's move on. And it really doesn't feel empathetic towards us, right? The user. It's just, here's what we're going to do next. And so, there's one case of many that where brands don't really embrace what they are now, and over time it really hurts their brand. I don't think it attracts a future where we see ourselves, as a raving fan of the brand.
And to your point about Avis, you slipped into talking about empathy and imperfection at the same time, quite naturally, when they, with sort of your opt-in permission, chased down your iPad and brought it back to you. And Facebook doesn't have that sort of empathetic, or even the imperfection of it. It tries to always be the smooth, glossy, glassy surface. And there's some customer erosion, especially in the younger demographic, that are moving to TikTok, and YouTube is actually still where people are spending their time and finding human connection in ways with people. Yeah, that's fascinating. And there's also an interesting sort of the yin yang dichotomy. There's maybe, what do you think about this? The idea that sometimes brands, as they get monolithic and corporate and sort of hierarchy driven, there's almost an importance to focus even more on what I would call hospitality, which is true service of your customers. And hospitality would be defined by this book I'm reading, Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, who had a restaurant group in New York, as something done for you, not something done simply to you. Facebook giving me a profile is something to me, but how can you, as a big corporation and company, how can you find those moments of delight for your
Oh,
customers?
man, I'll tell you, I've had many, and I love highlighting them and sharing them on social media. And I think that's what we do when we have that moment of truth, where all of a sudden somebody goes above and beyond, or at least it feels like that, and you feel seen. I mean, every single time, what you're talking about is making somebody feel seen. That's
Hmm.
really the key here. So if you make somebody feel seen, you are creating a customer for life, and that's the key to this. And so, like for instance, with Clear, CLEAR, they're a fast way of getting through the X-ray lines at airports. I've become an ambassador for them, but not the usual typical way. I became a raving fan of theirs because I used to travel 200 days a year, and so they became kind of a staple for me. It was just match them up with TSA, and man, you get through lines way faster, doing that. And so, but Clear became great because they had personality. TSA, not so much. I think they could work on that. Although their Instagram profile is pretty funny. Follow them on Instagram, and they do some funny stuff. So they're starting to get more human. I just want to see it now in the lines. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, when I go through Clear, they have that. You see that they call you by name. They walk you over to the thing. You feel like a valet almost. Well, one day this guy like saw me all the way down. I was at the San Jose airport here, about ready to go, and he like almost ran to the end of the line, grabbed my bag from me, and I'm like, okay, I got to record this. This is like, what the heck? I feel like I'm at a hotel, and somebody's like, let me get that. Let me get that for you. He was like jumping into action, and I flip my phone on and I'm recording it because he's taking my bag all the way down the line. He's like, Mr. Kramer, it's so good to see you. Oh, Mr. Kramer, let's get you going. And he's like, I already got it queued up for you. I saw you down there. Let's get this going. We're going to get you through as fast as possible. And then all of a sudden he gets me through and he says, have a great day. I already talked to the guy over there. He's going to get you through even faster. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
So I just felt like beyond seen. And so I just posted the video. I'm like, if this is Clear, I'm a fan. And that's all I posted. And the thing went viral. Like people just started like, yes, I have that same thing with Clear. Like everyone else in the world is having the same thing, not just me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see him 2 months or 3 months later in Las Vegas, and he's there. He does the same exact thing. And he says, Mr. Kramer, and then he stops and he turns around and he says, I want to give you a hug. I'm like, okay. And he gives me a hug and he says, because of that video and because of that time, I'm now a manager, and they have me training and traveling all over Clear to make sure that everyone knows that being seen and helping humans the way that we do here at Clear is going to make a difference. And I'm like, this company is awesome. The fact that they saw that and they actually instill that in the company and have him hire other people and train them on how to be more human. Oh, human company for life.
Mm. There's so much amazing stuff there. That gave me chills, that story. Uh, I think I would start by the idea of being seen as a phrase that we use a lot of times, going to talk therapy. I'm going to go see my therapist. Well, what are they doing? They're being seen by their therapist, and not in a medical way, in a human way, where it's one of the things we just crave. And it's one of the epidemics of our time, conversely, is loneliness. And so for you to, and I think we'll maybe talk about this next because it's so fluid, is the viral ideas. And you've had things that look like they were moving slowly and then all at once. But to get back to this idea of you making a video and throwing that pebble in the water and watching the ripples, and not even really, being directive about what happened next. I mean, you sort of just open-handed, maybe even just posted it and went on with your life, but it changed that person's life. And it probably changed the company's trajectory in some ways, because 99 people would have that experience and appreciate that experience, love that experience, but not say anything about it. And for you to see him seeing you, I mean, that's like a namaste moment where, where there's just compounded benefits for everyone. So I don't know where I'm going with that point, except that it's just chilling in the best way possible about what we can do as humans and brands to treat each other with respect. And even though there's not a direct ROI maybe attached to it that we could forecast, it's certainly there to be a human and to see where that goes for the net positive in our life.
I just want to put an exclamation point on what you just said, that it really does make a difference. And we don't have to do something because there's an outcome. We can just do it because it's helping the other person, and just show up. Like, it's the reason that you told me when we got on here that you're doing this podcast, because you absolutely love it. And yet you don't know where it's going to head yet. Hopefully I'm not being too transparent, but where it's going and what's going to happen. And yet you just love connecting with other humans and the conversations that you're having. And to me, that's exactly what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about. If companies took that on, that same mentality of not knowing, but doing it for the sake of human connection, that there would be more of what they wanted, which is impact. We all want impact. I mean, we are on this earth for impact. We want an impact of some kind. What that impact is, we don't know. We don't quite know, but we do want impact, whether we want it on our family, we want it on our friends, we want it on our work. We want to impact others. And that's why we're here. And sometimes we have to look up to the sky, to your sky, or to your universe, or to whoever that is to help you with that impact, whatever your sky or universe looks like. But when we look at that and we take it in and go, okay, how am I going to create more impact? Well, do it out of love. You just said, do it out of empathy, do it out of simplicity, and do it with imperfection. And you're going to show up, and it's going to happen.
Yeah. And we can't possibly forecast the good outcomes that are possible, because it's hard for us to imagine big numbers and how compounding, the magic of compounding, even works. So when I came back from a silent retreat with this forward message of help people in need and not knowing what to do with it, it started with filling up people's cars with gas, and instead of passing by. And then it led me into my own talk therapy work, where I looked inside and woke up, as Jung puts it. And then how could I have forecasted that I would be running and owning a conference related to this giant idea of mental health, not just awareness, which is, we're kind of at a critical, I mean, we're at kind of peak mental health awareness. Everybody's aware. But what about engagement? To your point, that's where I want to take things. Engagement and personal agency. What are you doing for yourself? What am I doing for myself? And I only do that. I only am passionate about that message because I saw how it changed my life. And those concentric circles in the pond are now way beyond my reach. And then it becomes about caring for the collective, and the idea of that we can serve other people. You know, you compared that person at Clear to a hotel valet, and what a hospitable approach. I mean, they are the hospitality industry. So what an interesting comparison, as a way to not just care for people, but solve their problems or help them see the solution or a solution in their life. And I mean, that's phenomenal, Bryan. That's why I sat and thought about our first conversation is observations like that.
Mm. I, you see, the more I get to know you, the more I just love the heck out of you. The way you approach things and the way you connect the dots and create more of this, like in your conference, and what your conference stands for. And we need more of that in the world.
Yeah. And I brought an especially human, imperfect approach to this conversation. That was my intention, is like, hey, learn, there's something here. We have a little more time. I do want to jump to another idea, and I appreciate that, because I don't want to skip ahead. I love talking with you too. I just really value it and benefit from it. So I want to reciprocate that because it's authentic, and I appreciate you saying that because it means a lot to me. So we touched on this idea that it's either a quote from Mark Twain or F. Scott Fitzgerald's "Slowly at first, then all at once," or from one of my favorite authors, Hemingway. There's this dialogue in "The Sun Also Rises." How did you go bankrupt? 2 ways: gradually, then suddenly. And that's sort of a negative, but the logarithmic benefit can be on the upside just as much as it can be sort of black swan tale on the downside. But I mention it because you shared this recently on Instagram. Success is nothing more than 1% improvement compounded daily and rewarded over the long term. So with that backdrop or context, could you talk about your experience and this watershed moment you had, I think during Brand Innovators, where you were giving a keynote and then suddenly mid-stage your life changed, and what somebody might be able to learn from that?
I'll never forget that moment, because I was standing on stage at Bloomberg West in San Francisco. It was a Brand Innovators event that Bloomberg was hosting, and there were CMOs and innovation people in the audience, executives in the audience, and it was the right audience and the right timing, because social media was right at the incline. It was like just at the crux of like getting to its peak, and I had been working my tail off for the previous 2 years or more than that, talking to, well, I've said this before, but talking to anybody and everyone about this concept of human to human and what we need when we need more of it. I was talking about that before social media became on the scene. We talked about it for the previous 10 years at our agency, and that's what our agency stood for, was creating more human to human engagement. So how can we create things like creatively that's going to create more human engagement? And so it's always been something my whole career. I've been since day one, maybe even going back to when I was like can first remember, like this is just who I am, and I don't know why, but it's who I am. So when I got on stage this one day and I had this slide up, it in the middle of the presentation, it did have almost exactly what the cover of Now What's the Book, which is there's no B2B or B2C, it's H2H, human to human. And I went to the next slide after I explained it, and the MC said, wait a second, go back again. And I did, and everyone was like, yeah, go back. I want to see that. And everyone kind of started lifting their phones and taking pictures of it, and it went. They put it on, Instagram and Twitter and whatever the LinkedIn, whatever the social platforms were. This was 6, 7 years ago. And then it went viral, like really viral. Like it went, we got over 24 million, I believe, impressions, and in over 15 languages of people writing in that I couldn't understand because we didn't have Google Translate back then. And so I had a good dear friend of mine who reached out and said, this is just going nuts, and you got to take this and take all the work you've done over the last couple of years and get this into a book, because it's something that, you know, needs to be answered. Everyone's having questions around, what does this mean? As simple as human to human actually is, it has a profound impact on companies because they were used to talking in one direction before social media. They didn't have to answer to the audience. This was a brand new thing. So that's what changed. All of a sudden you could go on and say my pizza was cold, and the brand couldn't do a darn thing about it other than be funny or respond or be negative. That was their choice. And so human to human was a whole different meaning when it first came out. Now it's something else. It's transpired into AI and automation and, you know, all this other stuff. It just keeps turning into the next new thing, which is something I never really planned on. I didn't think it had legs past that first 2 years. And I think it's just getting more and more relevant, even more so than it first was, on its own, not anything, again, that I've done. And so, so I took advantage of that time being the marketer that I was. And my wife and I took everything that I wrote from the previous 2 years, and on blogs. I blog every week. I still do. In fact, I blog every day now. And so I put it into a book in 4 days and self-published it, and became an instant international bestseller, which put me on the road. Fortunately or unfortunately, 200 days a year traveling, speaking, loving life. And at the same time, it burned me out. And that's a whole nother story. Created TED, you know, my second book a year later, which was supposed to be my first book, but H2H was my surprise baby. Shareology rolled out, and that was actually a great sister companion to the book on how sharing empowers the human economy and how we become more human by sharing. And then I broke down all the equations through how we share with each other and what to share, when to share, how to share, all that stuff. So we could talk about that another time. And then that created a TED Talk, which then also went viral. So I was just like living life, and it really just became this thing. I'm so grateful for it. And then I hit a massive burnout, and that took me in a whole different direction. But that's how that happened, to answer your question.
Wow. So you wrote a book in 4 days. You probably wouldn't do that again. Maybe you would if you could, but what a feat. And you blog every day. So do you have a writing process that works for you? How do you get into blogger writer mode every day?
I do it mostly at 6 to 7 a.m. Because my mind is not clouded with judgment throughout the day of other things. And so I find that my brain is less clouded. And so I have I keep a running tally in Trello, in one of my Trello boards, and I've got over 1,000 topics. Every time I hear something from somewhere, or I read something, or I'm just thinking something at the grocery store, it turns into a topic, and I just go like type it in 1 to 3 words, and it's there. I don't know when it's going to turn back up as something I write. It just needs to go somewhere. And then I write every day on Substack. I started that January 1st. I still blog over on my blog on my site once every 2 weeks, and that's my passion as well, because it's longer form. But my daily are just short little insights on kind of what I do on my Instagram posts. It's just how to be human. And it's every flavor of every walk of life on how we do this thing. And that's what I love blogging about. So I just pick something that hits me that morning, and I will write one. I'll start by writing just one paragraph, and that's the way that you do it. You only just want to write one paragraph, which turns into 5. And so I really only just set out with the intention of one paragraph on that thing. It has 5 paragraphs every time. That's just what we do. It's like we start something and then it grows into more. So if you just take 5 seconds to do something, it will be more than what you thought it would be. And so then at that point, I go into AI and I create an image every day of whatever that thing was about. And I include the AI image using Diffusion B, and I say it like the name of the image, and this was made by Diffusion B, and I send it out every morning. And I've picked up I haven't marketed it. This is actually the first time I'm ever talking about it. Actually, I did this more for me than anyone else. I just have so much fun doing it that I just did. It's like your podcast. So that's how I started it, and that's how I write. I do the same thing with my blog writing. I do the same thing. I write for Fast Company and Inc. and Forbes, and it all starts with just write one paragraph and just do that, and then from there it grows into an article.
That's great. And then there's a book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, that talks about the writing process, and that talk about just following an exercise of just, so you wake up at 6 and 7 and your head is clear. I wake up at 6 or 7 and my head is full. And so the writing process empties it in this stream of consciousness exercise. And for a good year, I just tried to write. It was either a time frame, 30 minutes of simply writing, or it got to sometimes a word count if I was doing it like on my laptop or something. But oftentimes it was literal pen to paper. And then all of a sudden, one day, boom, it turns into an 8-line poem. And then every day becomes an 8-line poem, partly because I'm curious about what this new path is and how it showed up. But it suddenly transformed. And then it transformed into a 32-line poem every day, just a full page. And then all of a sudden, these ideas come out around a video and podcasting and things like that. So they are evolutions, and are just continuing to follow the thread. I would love to play around more with the AI image stuff. I'm always fascinated by that. I've noted Diffusion B. I'm going to play around with that later. But yeah, that's interesting.
What stuck out for me is the cloudiness of the morning, and for you, and I used to have that too. And I realized that my thoughts were creating a challenge for me to be creative, because I was developing noise or chatter in my head. And I think we all face that. I pick it up more and more over the day. So I know that for me, and everyone's different. The thing that really cleared it up more, not that it's gone, but that it cleared it up more, is being an observer of your thoughts. And it's interesting because we look at meditation and we think like just to give an example, meditation is, I used to think that it was just calming your mind and getting it down to maybe one thought instead of like bouncing around to everything. And I was so wrong. It is not just about calming your mind. The idea, the Buddhist idea of actually creating a mind and getting to that aha moment, getting to that place where you really get like almost that buzz going without drugs, just a buzz in your head, and that warm feeling where you just want to be creative, and you're like, wow, okay, I got this. And everybody's experienced that once or twice at least in their lives, where they're like in flow. And that flow is from observing your mind. And it sounds so like, what, you want me to be schizophrenic? No, I want you to actually acknowledge the thought that you're having and then watch the thought as it's happening. So acknowledge it and don't stop the thought. Let the thought go on and on and on, and let it be creative with itself. If it's a bad thought, let it be a bad thought. If it's I'm having a bad day, give yourself that thought, but observe that and see yourself having it. And what changes over time is you start to become more aware, and your awareness shows up as clarity, and clarity shows up as creativity, and creativity gives you back everything that you're wanting more of.
Awareness, clarity, creativity, sort of inflow as you observe more and more. All right. I don't know. I think that's where we stop today. I think that's something I need to spend some time with after this. It's amazing. Thank you, Bryan. Could keep talking with you. Would love to have Courtney on sometime. Would love to have you on again, talk Shareology. But I'm so grateful to know you and get to know you better, have you on this show, of course. And I look forward to how our paths cross in the future. And I'm thankful for what you've taught me today.
It is an absolute honor to be here with you, Steve. I feel like we've known each other for more than 20 years. I don't know why that is. It's just who you are. I think you probably do that with others as well. At least I'm grateful to be here with you and feel that. So thank you as well.
Awesome. Well, to everybody out there, thank you for listening. Check out Shareology. Check out H2H, the book Human to Human, and bryankramer.com. You can find Bryan Kramer one on Instagram, lots of places on LinkedIn. So with that, we'll wrap up, and thanks again, and have a good one.